So this probably deserves a full-length edited video, but between art fight and getting all of my production shit off the ground right now, I really don't have time to do that. Maybe this will be a pitch for somebody who can help me do that. But I knew I needed to say something about Twitter because this shit is getting me angrier and angrier. Um, and it feels kind of useless and toxic to bottle it up. So I kind of wanted to comment real quick on the last 24 hours of this rebranding bullshit. I can be a little bitter about how some of you decide to use this site. And like as a caveat before I go off on this fucking bitch fest, if you feel like this is referring to you, it might. But I'm not really mad at the user base. I'm not mad at any one individual person who's using Twitter to fucking post right now. I'm mad at the infrastructure. And that's honestly the thing that I get mad about the most because I'm a fucking nerd. So like keep that in mind. If you feel like I am directly calling you out for your behavior on this fucking website, sure. But it is not with the intent of like shaming anyone in particular or making anyone out to be this horrible, irredeemable, bad person. Because as you know, a professional that works on the other side of social media, I understand that we are selling a product that you all are directly buying into. I'm just pissed. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Anyway, um I need a moment. This was not rehearsed. You know what? I'm gonna be mean about it. I'm gonna say it in the mean way. I get that most of you don't use this website to actually advance your lives in any way. I know that like after like probably now an actual decade because I started writing on Tumblr in 2013, and it is 2023, so that is a decade. Um, After a decade of me writing and communicating and whatever on the site, I know how, but like at the same time, yeah, I know you guys don't use the site to advance it anyway. I know that opening Twitter is your reprieve between your shifts at work or like bullshit that your partner is dragging you to or your family. We are meant to be an escape. We are your entertainment. But Twitter was more than that. Twitter was a free, open public forum. I'm sure you all have heard the word public forum enough times that it no longer means anything. But Twitter was an open, publicly available forum, available to people throughout almost the entire fucking world. And I don't think any of you think about that. But I do a lot because it's my job to. So I'm going to take my anger and I'm going to use that to create a little simmering space right here. And I want all of you, for 1 second, to think about the implications, especially some of you who are older. I'm 30, believe it or not. So I remember before we had internet on our phones, I remember when you have to your computer would scream every fucking time you connected to the goddamn internet. I remember. I'm sure some of you who are older than me are probably laughing. You remember like IRC chats and shit that I can't even like comprehend because I'm a little baby and I cut my teeth on AOL Instant Messenger. But like for the first time in recorded human history, for millennials and xennials or whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, Gen X, like we're the first generation to be internationally connected like that. Because we want to be, not because we went to college and took a lesson on programming or web design or were taught by somebody else that we paid money to. It was something where if you had the drive and motivation, if you had at least the bare minimum of a tool set provided you with a public education system, you could use Twitter to change your life. Because I did. I was a trans person that did not have help, who the majority of my support system relied on me. I was extremely sick. I had no help from my family, and in fact was actively, I would say, actively interfered with on the quest to figure out what the fuck was wrong with me. And it's only taken till like a couple months ago before I really got all my doctor shit in order. But I didn't find that shit out because I went to a series of doctors and paid them money until they figured out what was wrong with me. I didn't figure this out because I had people in my life that were like, hey Hachi, I realize that you've been struggling. Hey, have you gone to my guy? Because I didn't have a social network in real life. I was a trans person who was disowned from my family months before the Trump election. I was a trans person who was invited to speak at the fucking Post Memorial and had my fucking family tell me when they heard, not, oh, I'm proud of you for being selected by your university to speak during a national tragedy. It was, we don't appreciate your lifestyle choices. And while whether or not any of these were choices or how many of them were actually choices, especially choices that I made, is up for debate. But the reality of the situation is that I didn't have anybody. But I could get online. I could talk to people. And I could keep talking until I could find somebody who could help me. So I went from sleeping on couches in Florida to a nice house in Athens because of social media. Because I had people that told me about where to find doctors and places to live that weren't people I knew in real life, with the exception of like one. Well, I mean, not to be sarcastic about the one, but like, come on. I talked to a lot of people, and the majority of them are online. And that's really weird, isn't it? Like, oh, hey, like, you're crediting all this shit to Twitter? Yeah. Got several people jobs through Twitter. Found out about places to live through Twitter. Found about businesses that I should frequent through Twitter. Met other people, not just LGBT people or trans people in particular, just met other people. I use TweetDecks. For those of you who don't know what TweetDeck is, just imagine kind of like a client for Twitter. Like Twitter has its own little program that lets you do extended things with Twitter. Um, I use TweetDeck to find people in my area. I use TweetDeck to find all the people who were posting in the general vicinity of where I lived, and I connected with a lot of them. Some of them were scammers, but I've been on this website for a long time to figure out who isn't and who is. And there has never been a time in which I have been scammed in which I have not leveraged that into meeting more people. I don't think that I would be okay if it wasn't for Twitter. I found out recently from somebody who came to visit me from Florida what the cost of living is now, and I wouldn't have been able to afford it. And even when I could afford it, it was because I was in a situation where I was being consistently abused. And like, it's very hard specifically for me to sit there and like talk about myself. Um, because yeah, like it is really weird to boil that down to be like, oh yeah, it's all because of Twitter. But it was a couple months ago, about like a month and a half ago now. I found out that I can't even remember the word the trans woman used for it because they had their own term for it. Um, I've been horrifically underdosed on my testosterone. Now I know most of you can't tell that. Some of you in ways that are actually kind of incredibly funny. It's kind of my stick here. But like I use the internet. I use Twitter to find the forums full of cis men who were having trouble growing their beard in, and found out about minoxidil. And you can apply minoxidil to your face, and it'll make you grow facial hair. It'll fill in all the little patches that you get because your doctor did not prescribe you the right dose of testosterone for 6 years. But I found out about that because of Twitter. I literally went and took my blood test results and was like, ha ha, isn't this funny? Look at me on this chart. They fucked up my assigned gender at birth, and now it's really funny how it's automated like that. And then I had like 8 trans guys hit me up and be like, hey, Ben, those numbers are way too low. Ben, those numbers need to be 3 times as high. So I went and I found a different doctor that one of them recommended to me. And guess what? Yeah, they need to be like 3 times as high. And I've been feeling way better. I've been very busy this past month specifically because I have been feeling way better, doing more work. But how long would I have lived like that? I asked for help. What trans guy was gonna unsolicitedly come to me and be like, hey, Ben, I wanna see your blood work? Hey, Ben, you've been having trouble getting out of bed. You've been having trouble getting work done. Um, you've been feeling like shit. Uh, have you looked at those testosterone results? Sounds kind of like you're a low T soy boy, huh? Nobody's gonna fucking do that. Heck, and this is not to disparage anybody who reached out to me, so don't take this the wrong way. But I feel like some of you wouldn't even do that if you knew me in real life. But like Twitter allows you to do that. You have the degree of separation. I am not some guy that you have to worry about being offended because you call me a low T soy boy. I am a cuddly little bug eyed reindeer on the internet, and it's okay to tell the little cute reindeer that he should he should get his shit checked out because he's not going to bite your head off. Um, that part maybe not be as true, but I think that is fucking insane. I think that is absolutely fucking insane that I live in a time where I can honestly say that I would not be able to work, I would not be able to live my life, I would not be able to be a human being if it wasn't for the help that I got from people on this website. As a result, being the help I needed from people on this website, I was able to help other people. The thing that really fucking broke me, the reason that I am sitting here and ranting for 13 minutes now about this whole situation is that like fucking Twitter's broken. Everybody knows it. I get like dozens of DMs a week. I went for my DMs and I found somebody who found my old YouTube video on how to connect your GoFundMe fundraiser to Twitch, and explanation totally not necessary, but doing it anyway because I am who I am as a person. Twitch has many different ways in which you can fundraise for charity, but they are not officially connected to GoFundMe. They have their own service now, and they kind of want you to, they want you to do that. They want you to do their little charity service. They don't want you to do like an external thing they can't track. They can't tell their investors or like interested parties that they're a platform for all of this fundraising if they can't keep track of it, right? But like that's beside the point. The important part of this is that you need to do like an extra little funky GitHub bullshit in order to set things up to work properly when you're fundraising for a GoFundMe and doing a stream. And I looked at that process and I'm like, I can barely understand this. And while I'm not the smartest chicken, I will say that like I do know more than most, so I should make a little guide and do this. And like I'm not a big fucking streamer. I've got like 5,000 of you that follow me, mostly because of like stupid memes I find on other sites. So like I can't really get my shit out there, but somebody managed to track it down and find it anyway. And the message that I got was, "Hey, I'm doing a fundraiser for my relative who doesn't have functioning lungs. And I'm looking at your guide and it seems like I have made a mistake. So if you have the time, help me." And that's not the only message that I've gotten like that. I've got a Discord with, don't ask me to cite an exact number, 300 to 400 trans people from Florida and other places around the country that need to move. Um, so I get messages like that every day. But seeing it like that in one solid message, just like, hey, in marketing, it's like a pitch, right? Like, this is a slight aside. But, like, in marketing, it's like a pitch. For people who do need to contact other people for help, I'm taking this little aside and explaining to you why I like that message in particular. Um, so when I was working for a charity fundraiser down in Miami, the name of which I'm not going to reveal because they suck, um, we had this thing called the walk up, and I was really bad at the walk up, which is why part of why I feel like it's important to mention it. But the whole thing of the walk up is you're out in public, you're fundraising in front of like a fucking Walmart or something, and you see somebody come up, and that person looks like somebody you can donate to your cause. And the trick is that you need to convey that information. You need to get that hook within the space of time it takes for you to walk up to another stranger in public and get their attention. You walk up, present yourself well, and then you give your pitch. Hey, I'm working for X charity. This is more about what we do. And I'm not giving the pitch because, I'm not legally allowed to do that. But I hate doing it. It's the hardest part of the job to me. Approaching a new person and asking them for help was one of the hardest things that I ever learned how to do. And it was under high stakes. I picked up that job with the idea that I would finally be like a thing to set me on the right track. And it didn't. It eventually put me in the right direction that led me here. But teaching you that pitch is the majority of learning that job. And when that person gave me that pitch, hey, I saw your guide. I need to help somebody I love. Please help me. They sold me more than just helping them. In that moment, I realized the gravity of the work I was doing. Because this person who was doing a GoFundMe for their sibling, how else were they going to raise money? I don't even think it was their sibling. I'm just shoving that off the top of my head. I think it was a more distant relative, like a cousin, but it doesn't really matter in the context of what we're talking about here. If they didn't have the ability to stream, to give their pitch, to be like, hey, I'm me. Here's somebody I care about a lot. They need help. You have the space to help, right? They would be completely alone. They wouldn't get that help. Now, there are ways you can apply for funding if you have medical issues, but they are beyond stressed. They are not as efficient as just giving people money. But if it wasn't for the ability to get around that, your alternative is just watching somebody you love suffer and not having any control over it. And yeah, I'm not saying this with the idea that every GoFundMe that somebody approaches me for will be successful. I don't even think the majority will, unfortunately, because that's just how this is. Um, it's vastly unfair. But when you're watching someone you love suffer and you feel like you can't do anything about it, having some way to take control over an unfair universe to be able to sit there and be like, I can at least do something. That means something. It means at some level of peace of mind. And I don't mean to use this as a point to say that people should not argue about social media. I feel like people should absolutely do that, hold people accountable. I want to see the same level of criticism that I see for Elon Musk on Tumblr and Blue Sky. I want to see people who like legitimately question how these sites are run and how we can run them better. But I personally feel that if we don't acknowledge that Twitter is a vital resource for people, if we pretend that all Twitter is a little escape for us between our shifts or a way to post, our dumb little memes of our friends or whatever. We're we're not just we're not just forgetting about the people who need help. We're forgetting that in the course of less than a generation, we have vastly redefined our ability to communicate with each other in a way that will never be the same again. And we can use those resources to help people. We can use those resources to reach out to our community. The people who live in your city or town are not just Twitter randos. They are citizens. They're people who work and live with you, who vote, who feel love and pain and all those stereotypical cheesy things that somebody with a much better pitch has said many times before me. But when you look at the face of a when you think about how almost every single person, with the exception of bots or whatever, just to be pedantic about it, when almost every single person that you're interacting with is somebody, why aren't we sitting here and realizing how important that is? Why is it that when the majority of people are getting their social interaction for a fucking app, that we aren't questioning what happens when that app makes itself more accessible, when it limits DMs to people who can only pay $8? Because sometimes it's not even about not having the $8. Sometimes it's just not giving them your information. What happens when we make it so that some words, you know, like cis, that are widely accepted by the medical community are considered like slurs and bannable? What does it mean to have control of a public space like this? Now, do I think the majority of the people that are using Twitter to fundraise or to ask for help care about that? No. But I do know that it makes it harder for me to find them. It makes it harder for me to fundraise for them. It makes it harder for me to do literally anything. But I'm going to keep doing it. I don't care if I have to learn how to speak in front of a camera again. I don't care if I have to go do vocal training so that I can talk for longer. I don't care if I have to sit down and write copy for 1,000 letters to 1,000 other influencers. Because I've done it before. I can rebuild again. All of us are going to have to rebuild again. But rebuilding is important. It's not this fruitless endeavor where I feel like people should just go hop ship to another social media site and go back to doom scrolling. I think we need to reach out to the people who we care about, the content creators and influencers, particularly the small ones. And I think we should rebuild those networks again. Twitter has had at least a decade, but that's not all of the internet. It's not even close. But it's going to take time. It's going to take actual initiative in order to rebuild the same structures that we had to help people elsewhere. Tumblr doesn't have an algorithm, so you have to rely on more word of mouth. Mastodon presents hurdles for most people to use. And Blue Sky is invite only. So far, there isn't really a replacement. You could use Instagram, Facebook, Threads for an example, but those are all require your real name. I'm literally going to get my name changed finally because I can't advertise on Facebook without violating their policies under the name I actually go by. And that presents hurdles. That presents hurdles like for people who can't afford to get their name changed or who can't justify doing it in their current living situation. We don't have a place to go, but I think we can build it.